If you're studying for exams, revision is a word that you'll be hearing over and over and over again. It isn't without good reason though. Year on year, it's clear that those students who do revise are much more likely to perform better in their GCSEs than those who don't. It's the age-old point of being organised and prepared. However, it's one thing saying that you need to revise or that you are revising. Knowing how to revise effectively is something else entirely. In this video, I'll be going over my top 5 tips for revising effectively. Please note that these tips are based entirely on my own experiences from back when I was a student and from my current role as a teacher. I'm not saying that these methods will work for you, but they are approaches that have worked for myself and other students that I've worked with, so it may be worth at least giving them a try if you're finding revising difficult. Okay, so my first tip, and the one that really forms the basis for the other 4, is work smart, not hard. This was perhaps the greatest piece of advice I received at school about revising. There's no point getting home from school and sitting down to read a textbook for 4 hours. You'll be bored to tears, and by the time you're finished, you'll most likely have forgotten most of what you'd read in that first couple of hours, not to mention the fact that you'll probably never want to revise ever again. Work smart, not hard is all about planning your revision so that it is efficient and works best for you. Know how you work best and tailor your revision to that. For instance, do you find it helpful to answer questions, or to write up notes, or to create mind maps, or to practice old exam papers? Do you work better in 15-minute chunks with a 15-minute break after each one? Or do you prefer to put in a half-hour to 45-minute shift before then having a break? Everybody's preferred method will be different, but just ensure that yours is the best one for you. Don't waste time and energy trying to cram hours and hours of work in if that isn't going to help you. Be smart about it. Tip 2 is to create a revision timetable. Successful revision relies on discipline and commitment. You need to be willing to sit down and work. Something that I found that can help with that is to produce a revision timetable. Distribute all of your subjects across the days of the week and work out the hours that you'll be able to revise each day. This is useful as you can then take into account other commitments you might have and plan your revision around them. This also helps to ease some of the pressure. If you just randomly choose a subject to revise each day, like many people do, you may feel overwhelmed at how many subjects and topics you need to get through. However, if you use a timetable, then you know exactly which subject you need to focus on for that day, and you can pour all of your energy into that, rather than worrying about all the other subjects, because you know that they'll get their time later on in the week. Tip 3 is to target your weaknesses. There's very little point in revising the things you're already good at. Of course, practice doesn't hurt, but if you are confident in certain topics, then you should ideally be using revision to target the areas you feel weaker in. Look up your targets or feedback from recent assessments, speak to your teachers, and see where you may have been going wrong. Then, prioritize clearing up those errors and build your revision around this. Tip number 4 is to lose all distractions when revising. You may not necessarily be in school when you're revising, but sometimes that isn't a good thing. If you're at home, you may be more inclined to sit in front of the TV or stick in some earphones and blast out your Spotify playlist at full volume. For some, these methods might work, but for others, they may prove to be distracting, making it even harder to concentrate on your actual revision. Again, this comes down to knowing how you work best. Does listening to music help you focus? Does working in a space where there's background noise help you? Or do you prefer to work in complete silence? One piece of advice I will add to this is, if you have a mobile phone, to put it somewhere out of sight unless you're using it for the revision. It's incredibly tempting sometimes to pick up that phone after doing a few minutes of work to check your Snapchat or your Instagram, but doing that disrupts your flow and concentration. If you say you're going to work for a period of time, make sure you try to stay completely focused throughout that period. Snapchat and Instagram will still be there when you're finished revising, I'm fairly confident. Finally, tip 5. Teach or test others. A great way of developing your own knowledge of a topic is to try teaching it to somebody else. You can create questions based on your topics and ask a friend or family member to have a go at answering them. You could explain different ideas to these people in a way that they'll understand. And in doing this, you'll also be breaking them down for yourself. Try revising with a friend or peer who's preparing for the same assessments as you, and test each other on the content. If you find that you're struggling in a certain area, then this identifies something for you to go away and focus on in your own independent revision. Then, test each other again at a later date and see if you've improved. Okay, so they are my top 5 tips for revising effectively. Ultimately, it comes down to being clever and organised about it, and not thinking that you have to stay up until 4 o'clock in the morning copying up notes from a textbook. But, as I said earlier, these are just some approaches that have helped me and other students that I've worked with. They are not definitive, but I do hope that you find some, if not all of them, useful for your own revision. Thanks for watching, best of luck with your own revision, and I'll see you next time.